Fraction Number Lines Introduction. Your learning target today is I can represent fractions on a number line, and you'll know you're successful when you can label a fraction number line by determining the numerator and denominator for each tick mark on the number line. As third graders, we've worked with number lines lots of times in school. Well, today we're going to be working with number lines with fractions, and today we're just going to see what this number line looks like. So when we work with fractions, I'm going to start my number line off with a 0, and it's going to end in a 1. And so I'm going to have some tick marks. Those are those lines on my number line that represent a different number. So like right away, when I see that there's that tick mark right in the middle, that means I have to think of the number or the fraction that is in between 0 and 1. I'm noticing that it's like exactly halfway to 1, right? Halfway is kind of my little hint that my fraction's going to be a half, right? 1/2. Because that is halfway in between 0 and 1, right? What if I have more than one tick mark on my number line? So there's already that one in the middle, but I'm going to add these tick marks. And so those all represent something different too. When it is closer to 0, the one right here, I'm going to call that 1/4. And we already know that this is 1/2, right? That doesn't go away, that stays the same. And then the next one that's closer to 1 is 3/4. So where do we get those numbers? Where do those come from? Well, let's count how many tick marks I have total on our number line, and maybe it'll make more sense. So I am not going to count the 0. Do not count 0 because 0 is nothing, right? So do not count the 0. That just stands for nothing. So don't count that one. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I count the 1. Do not count the 0, but count the 1. So how many tick marks that I have pink? 4, right? 4 tick marks total. And then which one is that one? Well, that's the first one, right? So that's why that fraction was 1/4, because it's the first tick mark out of 4 total. Well, what about this one in the middle now? And why don't I have that be a different color? There we go, so blue with some pink. Remember earlier when that was 1/2 because it's right in the middle? Well, it also is the same as another fraction. So that's the second tick mark, right? Out of how many total? 4, right? So another way to say 1/2 is 2/4. And that makes sense because 2 is half of 4, right? So you could say either one and it's correct. 2/4 or 1/2, either one is correct. Now let's look at the one that I'm going to have in brown over here now. How many tick marks total is that? Well, I know it's still 4 tick marks total that we counted in pink. And how many is the brown one? That's the third one, right? 1, 2, 3. So 3/4 is that fraction. Well, what about the last one that I'm going to have in yellow right here? Well, that's just the number 1. But it's also the same as a fraction. How many tick marks total do we have? We had 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. And then how many is the yellow one? Which tick mark is that? That's the 4th one. 4/4. So when I have the same numerator, just like this one, and the same denominator, just like this one, 4 and 4 are the same number, that equals 1 whole. And no matter what number that is on the top and the bottom, as long as they're the same, they're always 1 whole. Because we know that that is the last tick mark on our number line, and that is the number 1. So this is where I'm going to want you to pause the video, and I want you to label this number line based on what we talked about with the last problem. And if you need to rewind that video and watch it again, then please feel free to do that. But this is where I'm going to want you to try this on your own. So my tip for you is to count how many tick marks there are total. So do you know which tick mark you should not count? Do not count the what tick mark? The 0 tick mark, okay? So there's my big hint, I guess. Do not count 0 because 0 is nothing, okay? So count the rest, and I want you to label the other tick marks. What fraction would that be? So which fraction would this one be? Which fraction would that one be? And what fraction would that last one be? Okay? So please pause the video and try that. All right. So I hope that you counted 3 tick marks total. So that should be your denominator for each fraction. And of course, when we look at the first tick mark after 0, there's our 1. When we look at the second, that's our clue that the numerator is 2 right there. And then when we look at the third, we know that that's 3. So we should have 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3, which we know is equal to 1 whole. Nice work. So remember, your learning target today is I can represent fractions on a number line, and you'll know you're successful when you can label a fraction number line by determining the numerator and denominator for each tick mark on the number line.